Today we're going to talk about common problems with backyard ponds and how to fix them. So this is going to be a pretty short presentation, but these are for ponds like your koi ponds, water gardens, you name it, kind of those smaller ponds, which can experience quite a few problems that have very easy solutions, which will prevent your headaches and things associated with ponds. So we're going to dive into it right now. So number one, leaves and debris. This is going to occur throughout the year, but primarily what we're talking about is in the fall. So if you're living up in Canada or anywhere there's deciduous where every year the leaves will fall, then that is where we want to be. So in regards to that, as the leaves fall into the pond, they can sink to the bottom. They're going to release nutrients. They're going to cause other underlying issues we'll talk about in a little bit. But the simplest and easiest solution for this is a pond net. So at pondsupply.ca, we have pond nets available for sale. You can kind of DIY yourself. You can buy kits for them where they go over your pond, and there's various different sizes. But it's going to be really important to, once the leaves start turning and falling more frequently, to prevent this from happening is putting a pond net over kind of just before the end. Once all the leaves are off and you can blow them out, you could remove the pond net, but like I myself will just leave our pond net on all year long, even throughout the winter, put the snow on, and then remove it again, because as the snow melts, any leaves that are still there can also blow into your pond, and you just don't want to have those underlying issues. So another underlying issue that can occur with ponds, and it is related to leaves and debris, is Tannins, aka discolored water. So the way that happens is from leaves falling into the pond or branches, it essentially makes a tea. So they soak in the water, they're releasing their color, which can or cannot be harmful, but if you have fish or you want that kind of clear, natural look, having this tannins color can definitely take away from that. So preventing those leaves from getting into the water is number one for this, as well as branches and things like that. But this does occur throughout the year as well. So a couple products that you can use in relation to this is RapiClear. So RapiClear is a flocculant. You put it into the water and it'll clear that up for you. Or other really good products are BioClarifier and Clarity Max. When used together, they're going to help clear that water. They have a lot of other benefits along with that, where it's going to help reduce nutrients and therefore algae and different things like that, which we'll talk about. But BioClarifier and Clarity Max, when used together, will also help deal with discolored water, such due to tannins and different things like that. Or another option would be Pond Clear. So Pond Clear is also another bacteria base. It's going to help reduce your algae and different things like that. But Pond Clear can also help reduce tannins, which normally when we have clients in the early spring, there's going to be a lot of tannins in the water if they never netted their pond or they leave the water in, and things just kind of have that chance to really soak up. So early in the spring is when you see the most tannins in the water. And from our own personal experience, when we put in Pond Clear, it just wipes it right out. And then we have clients and customers that use RapiClear, BioClarifier, and Clarity Max together to get rid of that discoloration. It works fantastic. So another common problem is string algae, also known as hair algae. You'll hear about people having this quite a bit. This can be also in stream beds, in the depths of the pond, really anywhere. It can even float. But this is algae that's really kind of long and grassy, and then when you pick it up, it all bunches up together. But it can be very unsightly and cause a lot of different issues. It's pretty invasive. It'll grow rapidly. But this doesn't have to be a problem with the use of dissolved powder. So it's oxidizing powder that it works really well if you drain the water down a little bit and then sprinkle it on directly, but you can also don't have to drain the water. You can sprinkle this powder on, and what it's going to do is it's going to sink down and start oxidizing and lifting off that algae from the rocks. So if you have like a stream bed, what I would do is I would just turn off the waterfall or the power of the pump for that, let the water kind of flow, and then you can sprinkle this on, and then it's pretty easy to remove after that. You can just spray it out with a hose, and then scoop it up with a net, or just kind of picking it up with the rocks and stuff. But if you do have a lot of algae on the rocks as well, kind of just like that bit of a slimy coat on them, this works well for that as well. You can just sprinkle it all over, spray it off. And once again, it is also safe for pets and things like that. So it works really well. If you were to drain the water, it's kind of the same idea. You can just sprinkle it on to the rocks, and then I just use like a soft-sided brush, and after it kind of sits for a little bit, and then you can scrub it off, and it just lifts it right off very easily. Other treatments for spraying algae can include like your bacteria treatments and things like that as well. So having both in tandem would prevent that, but if you have the problem and need to get rid of it in a relatively quick period of time, then dissolved powder is the way to go. Next, then we get into just kind of algae in general. So this is the algae that could be floating in the water that's causing your algae to turn green. You could have other types of floating algae there's just so many different types of algae, but generally algae is green in color. If you have other different types of algae, then it would be great if we could have, like, you can send it to us and then we can identify it for you. But in general, most common algae that are going to occur are your green algae. And so here are the products that you would use to tackle that. So once again, pond clear. So pond clear doesn't only help for the tannins and clarifying your pond, but it also will reduce the nutrients that cause algae to grow. So pond clear, super easy to put in. You can get it in liquid form or powder form. You throw it into the pond, it's going to dissolve. And what that does is it activates the bacteria, which is in the pond clear, and they go to work. So they're going to go to work and reduce your ammonias, your nitrates, those things that really stimulate the growth of algae. And in turn, releasing those as gases and then clearing up your pond. This works really, really well, and it's 100% recommended to be used in turn with EcoBoost. EcoBoost isn't a bacteria, but it is also another 100% natural product. And what this does is it works as a phosphorus binder, and phosphorus is the number one kind of food source for algae growth. So if you have algae, chances are you do have either high phosphorus levels or some degree of phosphorus levels in your pond. And so using EcoBoost is going to help reduce that, as well as it also helps boost the ecosystem in there. So those bacteria that you put in with the pond clear, or your naturally occurring bacteria that are already in the water, when used with EcoBoost, is just going to give it basically what we like to say is Red Bull. It's just going to put it to work. It's going to work a lot faster, more efficiently, as well as you get that benefit of the reduced phosphorus. Then you have your other options, which kind of already mentioned again, is Clarity Max and BioClarifier. And these ones are really important that you use them together. And this is kind of just more of like a more designed for your water garden type. Whereas Pond Clear, EcoBoost, they can be used in like bigger water ponds. Whereas Clarity Max and BioClarifier are more designed for your water garden, your small backyard ponds. And when used together, they do the same thing that Pond Clear EcoBoost would do as well. So just a couple different options depending on the size of your pond or your preference on what you would like to use. Next, we have muck or organic matter. So muck is very, very common, especially in dugouts and things like that, but they also do occur in your water gardens and your backyard ponds. So basically, the way that's going to occur is if you have fish or you have those debris and they're settling in, sinking into the bottom, as they decompose, they're going to release organic matter, which then turns into this muck. So these are pretty extreme cases right here. Uh, I highly doubt that most gardens have muck to this extent, but if you do, we do have solutions for that. But generally, any sort of pond, you're going to want to put in just some maintenance doses of muck away, muck off, or muck tablets. So what these do is they sink down to the bottom. They're also another bacteria. And what they're going to do is they're going to eat that organic matter. They sink right to the bottom. They work where they are placed. So if you have a relatively small pond, you can kind of just scatter like a handful across the bottom. But generally, one scoop, which is found in the muckaway pail, is going to treat up to 1,000 square feet. So you would just kind of go accordingly to that. So muckaway is used in bigger ponds. Muck off is for kind of the smaller water garden types, where they have these tablets and you throw them in. They do the exact same thing. They're going to reduce those organic matter that's built up. And it's really important that you want to get rid of that organic matter because it's full of nutrients. It's full of ammonias, nitrates, phosphorus, all those things that are also going to stimulate the growth of unwanted aquatic weeds, or if you have a lot of algae issues, or if you have fish in general, you are really, really going to want to get rid of those ammonias and nitrates in particular, because those can be very, very harmful for your fish. So using this just to kind of clean up the debris that the fish are essentially pooping out, or if you have other sort of organic matter that kind of slipping in there. So that does build up over time. The good thing is if you stay on top of it, then it won't really be a problem for years to come kind of thing. It'll just stay on top of it and not let it accumulate. And then we have our very own brand with Clean Water Pro, the muck tablets, and they do a fantastic job. They have a really high count of the bacteria, and they're going to get the job done. So we have 3 different options, depending on your size or your preference. If you want one that's a lot higher in count or more designed for your backyard pond. Then we have stagnant water. And stagnant water, there can be a lot of issues associated with that. Number one, when you have stagnant water, you're going to have a lot of odor that kind of just comes in turn. But a lot of the issues that do occur with that is stagnant water means the oxygen level in your water are very, very low, which in turn will cause your fish to get stressed and then can actually potentially be fatal to your fish if you're keeping fish. If you have don't have fish or anything like that, but you have odor problems, then we also have the solution for that. So that's what stagnant water does. There's a whole bunch of other issues with it, but it's definitely something you're going to want to prevent. And the best way to deal with that is with a koi air tube system, or we have even larger systems where we can treat kind of small dugouts up to lake size. So you have 2 different sizes of koi air, where it's a 1 plate and a 2 plate, and this is more generally for your water garden, your backyard pond style. So what this is going to do is it's going to pump air into the pond, and through the processes of kind of chemical reactions. So when the air is pumped in, it's going to create disruptions at the surface, which allows oxygen that doesn't have, or water that doesn't have a lot of oxygen into it, to dissolve back into the water and increase your dissolved oxygen levels within the pond. And therefore, it's going to reduce your odor levels because there's going to be a lot of excess gas trapped in the water. So at first, when you turn it on, if you have stagnant water, you're going to have a lot of excess odor kind of smell because you're just kind of bringing all that up. But in a short time, it's going to purge itself, kind of get back to a relatively safe level. It's going to be keeping your fish a lot healthier. And it also works really, really well in tandem with your beneficial bacteria. So your beneficial bacteria are all aerobic, meaning that they require oxygen. So having good high levels of oxygen in your water body is just going to give your bacteria that much more of an extra kind of kick. So that's why aeration is really good for that. It also can help bind phosphorus with iron, which will then reduce your phosphorus levels, which is also good for algae. And another really good reason for having aeration is there are certain duckweeds or other kind of aquatic plants that don't like a lot of water movement. And duckweed, they can look really, really great, but it can soon take over a pond. So if you put in aeration in kind of your strategic locations, you can reduce that duckweed problem as well. So just a lot of benefits that aeration has. You can also put in a waterfall, a skimmer system that's going to help, but aeration is a lot more efficient at producing dissolved oxygen for water features. A lot of kind of common myths are that, well, you can put a fountain in or a waterfall that's going to get the water moving. Certainly that's going to get your water moving. There's going to be some benefits, but if you want to experience the full benefits of properly aerated water, you're going to need to get yourself an aerator. Also, if you have fish, an aerator is really, really good for keeping fish alive throughout the winter. So it's really important to maintain those dissolved oxygen levels. And if you put one of these systems into your pond, you can actually leave your fish in some cases. So depending on how cold it gets and the depth of your pond, you can put this aerator in tandem with a de-icer, a heater for the pond essentially, and keep your water open all season long. Your fish are going to get cold, but they won't, they'll just go into like more of a dormant hibernation kind of mode. And then they can sustain themselves all season long throughout the winter. And then once the spring comes, they'll start getting more active again as the water warms up, and then they'll start eating food and stuff, things like that. But so aeration definitely has a lot of benefits. If you don't already have some, definitely highly recommend to get that. So, and that wraps that up. There's just a quick little webinar that are addressing a few problems that you might experience in ponds. If you have any questions, feel free to give us a shout at cleanwaterpro.ca or pondsupply.ca today, where we have water quality specialists that know everything about fish, and from small water gardens to large lakes. So if you have any sort of questions, or if you experience any of these problems and you want a little bit more help on guidance in what you can do to fix these problems, give us a shout at pondsupply.ca today, where we, your water quality specialists, can help you clean up your pond. So if there's any questions, feel free to let me know. If not, we'll have a great day.